Welcome to the After Six Club's Ambitious Tribe podcast and webinar. I'm your host, Cassie Pajarito Braganza, international independent LinkedIn trainer, startup founder, speaker, and encourager of dreams and ambitions. In this training series, this is where I take you to a fireside chat conversation together with our guests. We will answer your questions and thought after advice when it comes to driving ambition, which you can take action right away and make things happen. All right. Hello, guys, and welcome back to an awesome episode of the Ambitious Tribe podcast and webinar. In this episode, we will be talking about niches and we'll circle around a strategy to keep yourself top of mind. I'm actually super duper thrilled and excited to introduce to you our guest for today because he finally agreed to have this conversation with you, not just with me. You, the tribe, is of course super important to us, and we'll be talking about beginnings, hardships, milestones, and key learnings with regards to the chosen occupation he is pursuing. Ladies and gentlemen, meet one of the few sports photographers in the country, the official sports photographer of the Philippine Volcanoes, Maharlika Pilipinas Basketball League, and UAAP, amongst others. My ever-beloved husband, Ryan Reynolds! No, just kidding. Raymond Fernanda.
Hello.
I know you're
Ryan Reynolds.
I know, right? I know you're gonna forgive me for saying that. So maybe I'm gonna replace in Ryan Reynolds, like the replacement. No, just kidding. All right, hi everybody.
Hello.
Hi, babe.
Hello, After Six. So good to be here.
That sounded so nasty. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about your backstory.
My backstory. Okay. We are gonna go as far back as 2005.
Okay.
Uh,
What happened?
my first job was with Accenture.
Hmm.
As you know, like any other fresh grad, you grab the opportunity of the first company who calls you and offers a job, and which I also did. I grabbed that opportunity to be employed with Accenture. That was one of my, how do I say this, defining moments that when it came to work-life balance in Accenture, they revived the Accenture Photography Club a year after I was employed. A year into my employment. So I had this outlet of, you could say stress, or you can also say like outlet of creativity when I did not have work. Back then, in Accenture Photography Club, we were taught the basics. They even shouldered one PCCI lecture. That's how supportive the club is. Until now, they actually are still supportive. I still keep in touch with them.
What's PCCI again?
Philippine Center for Creative Imaging. It's the only, if I'm not mistaken, it's the only Adobe certified school here in Manila. So that is where I got my basic photography class, my studio lighting photography class, my photography as a business class, and legalities in photography business class. So back to Accenture, that is where, so like I said, they paid for one PCCI lecture, which was held for 2 days, and it was also in Accenture where I learned how to teach basic photography. it's where it's where I started to hone my photography teaching skills. Back then, it was almost like every quarter, and I think majority of my Accenture life was centered on photography. There was still work, but there were times that I really wanted to go to work because of club meetings, club activities. And after I left Accenture, I went to HSBC.
Mm-hmm.
That was where I started to uh, book freelance gigs.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like every weekend, but it was in back in HSBC where I was able to book my first paid gig, and it was with my good friend Mot Rasay. Mot, thank you very much for including me in that one. It was baptism. I remember back then. So yeah, photography has been part of my life since 2008. There.
Okay, so how did you transition from being in corporate to finally saying, okay, this is it. I'm going to take the leap. I'm going to take the risk. And yeah, you did photography. I mean, maybe take us through the entire transition to the journey.
The transition happened from employee to freelancer when I was with HSBC back then. There were times that my weekends were occupied with shoots.
Mm.
There were times that after work I would edit my freelance gigs.
Mm.
And I am going to admit that when I was with HSBC, my mind was already consumed with photography. So I did not say that I left HSBC, my work in HSBC, undone.
Right.
But it was a really constant juggle between uh, working in a bank setting and photography running in my mind. So in 2014, I decided to what they say, take the plunge or dive into the deep end. So I did it June 2014. That was my last month being an employee.
All right. So did you ever thought about, okay, I'm here, I'm 100% committed now, I'm gonna do it. But did you ever, I mean, did it ever occur to you that of course you have bills as well? I mean, did you sort out, okay, when you finally took the plunge, did you have like a game plan? Like let's just say you were having a lot of gigs already lined up. It was really a choice between the corporate and of course the side hustles and turn it into a main hustle? Did it ever arrive into that?
Well, to be honest, I did not have a backup plan back then. It was one of the worst decisions in my life financially. It was emotionally, it was the best. It was the best decision I made ever. So I decided to go full time. Unfortunately, you know what they say, experience is the best teacher. So I did not have regular clients back then. The worst was during my first year, maybe 2014, 2015. I only had like three three shoots in 6 months.
Oh dear.
So
Oh,
I
oh
I
no.
did not I did not plan things out very well. So yeah, that was one of the hardships I encountered in being very noob or newbie
So what did you do?
freelance
So these,
photographer.
I assume that these events that you took were not yet sports at the time. It was probably some other random event, correct?
It was those three, well, at least last
Those three?
2014, those three shoots were booked by a good friend,
Right.
also a former employee of HSBC, Ren Faustino. So uh, he specializes in uh, kiddie parties, baptisms in Bataan, and he was able to book a few weddings that year, and he was ahead of the freelancing gig, ahead of me in the freelancing gig for, I'm gonna have to say, maybe a year and a half. So he had some contacts, and Bataan is, the, if I'm not mistaken, the choices or the number of freelancers in Bataan are not as much compared here in Manila. So he did have
Sure.
those regular clients, and
Mm.
being the good friend that he is, he took me in.
Okay, so that became your playground basically in terms of trying to explore on which route to take. Okay, so what drove you so sudden into sports photography? I mean, it is the same. I mean, it's still event, sure, but it's a
Yeah.
different niche altogether, and it's very specific. Plus, there's only a few of you. So how how were you able to define that? Okay, let's try this. What's the story?
Well, I started in sports photography 2009. 11 years ago, I was still physically active. I did
Right,
a lot of boxing and Muay Thai
right.
in Alvin Aguilar's gym. Alvin Aguilar
Mm,
is the founder of URCC.
mm,
So I talked to him. I talked to Richard Lasprilla. I told them, I'll take photos. X deal, let me in. Let me take photos. I'll give you the photos. You have material in your website. And yeah, I started.
yeah, but
I
that's a good
started.
move. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I started with X deals. I started with X deals in a gym that I went to for physical activity. And my camera back then was borrowed. It was the camera that I used for sports back then was owned by Ricky Chu, one of my uh, friends from the Accenture Photography Club. So he let me borrow his camera for uh, I think around four mixed martial arts shoots. So that's how I got my start in sports photography. It wasn't paid like I think everyone else. I don't know, but that's how I got my start in sports. And then I kind
Mm,
of left sports for work because I had to stop sports photography because I was not able to borrow cameras. I did not have the right gear. I did have gear, but I did not have the right gear for sports.
mm,
And then I went back last 2013.
mm-hmm,
So I was able to save up, buy the right gear, and
mm-hmm,
then Recticano.net, an alumni support group for DLSU,
mm-hmm.
they took me in. That's where I got my start in basketball,
Right. Okay.
and I juggled I juggled basketball with weddings starting 2014, and I I think my last wedding shoot was 2016. So I did like 2 years in the
Mm.
wedding industry.
Okay. So didn't you enjoy the wedding industry? I mean, there's so much money in the wedding industry.
I'm gonna have to say I enjoyed it. It's just that
It's not you.
it's not my cup of tea.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah, it's not
yeah,
you.
it wasn't me. I mean, I was always looking for the thrill.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, wow, that's interesting though, then on how it just led you to one after another into trying out different kinds. So, you did kids' parties and then events, corporate events as well, and then weddings, and then this and that and that. And you
Yeah.
just played along and went smoothly to whatever was presented to you just to discover. But what made you say, okay, this is it, I'm going to stick to this niche, which is sports photography, and the rest is just going to be maybe sprinkles of opportunities instead of making sports photography as a second thought?
What made me stick to sports photography? Because I've always been a fanboy, or let's say a big fan of sports. I grew up watching, PBA. It was the old school, PBA like Ginebra, San Miguel, Shell, Alaska. I grew up watching, I think, pirated UFC fights on Channel 13, I think, or Channel 9. I've always been exposed to sports. I started sports with grade 6 in Manresa. So I've always had sports in my life, and I think it's how I I think it's that is what made me stick to sports, because I've always had sports in my life. I may not look like it, but yeah,
Yeah.
I've always tuned in to almost any possible sport here in the Philippines. And back then, cable was not really a big thing. So whatever I got from other countries, I just watched it. I just took it all in. You know,
Okay, so you chose, okay, so what was the defining moment though? It's like, okay, this is it. Like Eureka. And I saw lights and butterflies. I don't know. What was the defining moment?
defining moment.
Yeah.
Wow, defining moment. I'll say that my defining moment in this sports
Mm-hmm.
photography career would be the time that Philippine Rugby called me back.
Yeah.
Because my first ever gig with Philippine Rugby was not really Philippine Rugby. It was their sponsor, Transcom.
Yeah.
Transcom was the headline sponsor of the Philippines versus Hong Kong under 16s game.
You're
And
welcome. Okay.
Transcom
Yeah.
Transcom needed a photographer because they were the company that, it headline. I mean, they're the company that's in the front of the jersey.
Well,
And
I'm okay.
Transcom needed that photographer to be able to show their higher ups that, hey, we sponsored a team. I think this is their CSR or something.
Yes, it
But
was. Mm.
back then, I I thought that it was just a one-time thing,
Mm-hmm.
because my first gig with rugby, it was August and it was raining cats and dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So I did not like my photos. One, because I was not able to position myself well in terms of the angle in taking photos. I was stuck in a tent because it was raining. So when I got the call back from Philippine Rugby themselves, it was like, I'm sticking. It's gonna be sports. I'm good.
Aw, okay. I'm just so happy that it turned out that well. I didn't know that it was that pivotal, and I thought all the while. Um, okay, guys, I know we're married, but there are a lot of things that I'm rediscovering right now, and which is great. It only takes, an interview for me to know. Maybe we should have more of these kinds of interviews, so that you get to spill stuff that I wanted to. No, no, but that's good. I mean, it's nice though because you had practice with different um, opportunities, and you were open to trying out a challenge. Of course, in sports photography, it's a different format. It's a different ball game altogether. What differentiates you? I mean, what, or not just you? Maybe the right question is, what differentiates sports photography that made you fall in love with it in comparison to the other niches that you've tried?
Well, for me in sports photography, you really need to immerse yourself
Mm-hmm.
with the sport,
Mm-hmm.
and that makes you a really good photographer if you know the sport,
Mm-hmm.
because knowing the sport can help you predict what's going to happen up to some extent,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then that's the time that you can anticipate, your good shots.
That's right.
Their career defining shots, their emotionally happy shots. So players players are mostly about action,
Mm-hmm.
but when they see that emotional, happy, hugging, high five shot, it gets to them. It it has more impact to them than their action shots, because athletes are used to seeing action shots, but they're not used to seeing their emotions. They're not used to seeing shots that humanize them on the court.
Right. Right.
There.
So I always relate rather. I always relate sports photography as if, how my dad always say it, National Geographic geography. National Geography, yeah, that's how he say it. So I always relate it to National Geography or to how newspaper does it, because there's a certain journalistic style into it. Because you're right, it has to have the emotion of the athlete, and all these pivotal moments as well for them, and it's not just for the sake of having mementos rather.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I love the way that you said about sticking to the niche, trying to get to know, well, not really trying, but getting to know on what is going to happen or how the sport is, because this way you get to, again, that's right, predict in some point on what is it that you have to take, because I'm sure it's a long game. Sometimes it takes you what, 3 hours, 2 hours?
Well, the longest game in rugby is uh, the longest would be 45 minutes per half.
Right, right.
So it's an hour and a half of playing time,
Yeah.
not including the timeouts, the medical time stoppages, and whatnot.
Okay.
There.
But Raymond, I'm sure there's a lot of challenges as well in sports photography. I mean, you were when you, I mean, going back when you said you didn't have the right tools at the time, but still you pursued. Um, when you bought your first camera, well, at least your professional camera in
Yeah,
2016, was that you said? Around
13.
13 rather, so
Yeah.
2013, when you bought your professional camera, did you ever think that it was fitting for sports?
I did my research. So, you know what they
So you
say,
had sports in
your
mind
due
already then?
diligence. So, uh, yeah, I had sports in my mind, and I spent hours reading what cameras and what lenses were a good fit to sports. And I ended up sticking with Canon. Canon was my first DSLR, 2008. I sold it because I had to concentrate on work. And then I bought my second camera in 2013 and the lens. So that's how I knew that it's going to be sports.
Okay, so that's good. So okay, so if there are people who wanted to become like you or venture into sports photography, is it necessary to have the right tools, or is it okay that they have any professional DSLR? I mean, I'm sure it's hard to capture it through a phone. I think this is
Yes.
one thing that a phone can capture really, really well. So yeah, so it's important to have the right tools right away, or is it okay to
Uh,
start with the DSLR and then the right lens? And it's expensive, huh?
it's I really believe in the saying that it's not in the Indian. It's not with the Indian. It's the arrow. Oh, sorry. It's not with the arrow. It's the Indian.
Mm-hmm.
But there are situations that your arrow is not enough and you have to upgrade it.
Okay.
So there are times that there are some sports that can can be covered using kit lens, sorry, or the default lens that comes with cameras, but it will serve you up to a certain point, and then
Mm.
you will need to buy that, that 70 to 200 lens that gives you farther reach. So um my advice would be, wear out your kit lens, wear out your camera before you buy that 70 to 200 lens, or whatever lens you want to use for sports. It gives you the knowledge. It gives you at least the basic knowledge to cover sports, and then use that knowledge when to further use when you upgrade your gear.
Okay, so what challenges have you been having, and how do you resolve them? I mean, because I mean, I may have had experience with a little about photography, but not as extensive as you being in a profession. So I'm sure there are a lot of people out there also who's, venturing into this and that. There was a year that everybody wanted a DSLR, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you are already, right? So yeah, so what challenges and what kept you going? How did you resolve them?
One, I'm gonna have to say, yeah, like I said earlier, your cameras and your lenses. It will become a challenge once you get to be be more skilled,
Mm-hmm.
and then you crave more. You
Mm-hmm.
crave more different shoots. You crave more different kinds of shots, which require a different kind of gear. So for a sports photographer that is starting out, I can really say that I relate to you guys, that gear is a challenge. And one more thing that I can think of is clients. You know, it's not easy to look for sports clientele. Number one is they could already have a sports photographer. Number two, they don't have the right, or they don't have the means to pay for a sports photographer, or their marketing budget. Oh yeah, which is related to the second thing I said. Their marketing budget does not cover photography for their team. So I think that's that's one of the challenges that I personally encountered. In the MPBL, there are right now, I think, 29 or 30 teams. So
A lot. Okay.
finding finding teams that need a photographer is not easy, even if there are like 29, 30 teams out there.
Okay. Well, let's write them. Hi, 2019s. Please hire my husband.
28, because
They have.
I already have Batangas under my belt. So thank you, Batangas. Thank you, Tanduay. I love you guys.
Okay, so how did you resolve them? I mean, how did you resolve now that you've distinguished these challenges? What is your go-to? What did you do? I mean, what can be done?
For the first challenge I said, which is
Mm.
gears, uh, either you buy, which is not that financially smart if you're starting out.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did back then was, like I said, I borrowed gear from Ricky, from a friend, Ricky Chu. Again, thank you very much. I owe you my sports career. So I borrowed his D90, which is a Nikon camera, and his 70 to 200 lens. That was, for me back then, it was like a move that I needed to do just to be able to shoot mixed martial arts. I did not know back then that it would save me now, that I was not aware that borrowing could uh, give you that lifeline or that opportunity that got me up to this point. And
Mm-hmm.
for clients, sorry, before I go there, borrow gear until you get to save up, and then buy that sweet, sweet upgraded lens when you've got the budget. And for clients, it's going to be how you market yourself. Um, it's how you present your portfolio to a prospective client. It's how you package yourself, and it's how you negotiate with them and for your pay. And yeah, there I think it's a matter of showing them what you can provide and what will make you stand out if you were compared, or if you are being compared to other sports photographers.
All right.
So yeah, put
Okay.
yourself out there.
Okay.
I'm not gonna share my secret on how I got Batangas, and
Yeah, of course.
previously how
But
I got
yeah, of
Davao
course.
Occidental. But I will say that put yourself out there.
Okay. Okay. You learned so well. My husband, I'm so proud of you. Let's just say, were you listening to all my classes? And no.
I secretly take everything in.
Yes, I'm so proud of you. And the strategy on, when you said, don't buy stuff and something to that effect, don't buy stuff not until you don't have the money. Good job. Okay. Alright, I can actually pawn all this stuff. It's right here in front of me, honestly. It's just here. So, no, just kidding. Okay, so, no, but these are valuable. It's really, I mean, I think in every business, putting yourself out there, packaging yourself, it's how you present yourself. Yeah, that's so true. Your personal branding
Yes.
is truly, truly important. And of course, what backs you up? These are the clients you've served and those you've nurtured. And of course, those who will speak about you as well and talk about you. And best amongst all that is the referral. So when they keep on referring you, it just means that you're doing something really right and great. So
Yeah.
these are fantastic realizations that you've shared. I think our viewers and our listeners are gonna find it useful as well as you walk them through what were the steps that you took in order for you to aim for a certain niche. Because having niches is difficult, especially with sports. It's
Oh,
not,
yes.
I guess, in compared to weddings. Weddings is everywhere. I mean, weddings. A lot of people get married every day, so it's just a matter of really, But there are pros and cons. Now, can I just say, can I just ask you also, what is the purpose that you see in sports photography, though?
Sports. Well, I really could not. I think I can't answer that in a really general
Just for
way.
you, yeah, but for you.
Uh, I'm gonna have to say my purpose with Philippine Rugby is uh, to help the sport grow here in the Philippines. Let's all be honest. I think Filipinos heard of the sport rugby
Of
when
course, they have their
bench
oatmeal
when
and
bench came
yes,
out.
yes,
Yeah,
guys.
when bench
Hi.
came out with those distracting Sorry, Jake.
Lost
Sorry,
traffic.
Evro.
Hi, guys. I love this, guys.
So yeah, I think it was the time when
Mm.
Bench was the headline sponsor, or I'm gonna have to say the outfitter of the national athletes when they made the Rugby World Cup years ago. I think that was the first time that the the country has heard about rugby, the sport, not whatever. So yeah, that's for me. That's my purpose in Philippine rugby. I want the Filipinos to know that rugby is here as a sport. I still get the questions or the statements that, oh, there's rugby here in the Philippines. I was like, yeah, it's been here for like at least a decade now, and they're not aware. And I feel like the domestic league players who saved my shots, and they upload it as their profile photos or display photos. It's at least one of the ways that people get to know that rugby is here as a sport, and
Right. Yeah.
whenever Philippine rugby, Jake, uh, Ada, who's part of World Rugby, whenever Lori or Evro, whenever they use my photos for their reportings with Philippine Olympic Committee, or at least the Philippine Rugby Board of Directors, it gives me a sense of fulfillment that I'm able to take photos of the domestic players, the local athletes here, and they get to show to sponsors, they get to show investors that there's a league or there's rugby here in the Philippines.
Right. So this is great because not only are you taking photos of them for your fulfillment and for your career, but also you advocate what they advocate. I guess that's something really, really great as well, because it becomes unified with their advocacy, which
Yeah.
also makes it more inclusive. um yeah, okay, so I mean that's great. I mean that's good to know. So not only do you immerse yourself with the sport, but you also have to immerse yourself and unify yourself with what is this sport. I mean, this certain management is also doing what is it for. So that way when you take photos as well, it also relates and also shows what they can use for whatever reasons that they may need it. So it's capturing it for those. Again, it's also marketing basically, that you understand what
Yes.
they need. Okay, so that's actually that's great. That's a good realization. But Raymond, what milestone really took you to the roof? Like, I'm legit. This is it. I'm really a sports photographer. I'm doing it well. I'm gonna accelerate and dream more.
Uh, you
Aside from the
know,
Olympics, hopefully.
I uh, my honest answer to that is
Mhm.
I don't think that I've made it. I don't, because I know that there's a whole world of sports out there that I could be covering. There's there's the NBA All
Oh,
Star Weekend. There's the NBA Finals. There's the Super Bowl. There's WrestleMania. There's the Major League Baseball Fall Classic. There's the NHL Stanley Cup. There's so much more that I haven't covered.
but which
And
one would you say that, okay, I would finally say, huh, okay, milestone check.
um, tough question. Wow. Uh,
Wasn't it the Hong Kong one? No.
I was gonna say that because last year was the year that the Volcanoes reached their highest ranking Hong Kong Sevens tournament ever. The Philippines, since it is a growing sport here in the country, doesn't the Volcanoes have had challenges in qualifying for Hong Kong, for the Hong Kong Sevens, and they 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 qualified for the Hong Kong Sevens late 2018, and the moment that we knew, or Philippine Rugby knew that they qualified for the Hong Kong Sevens, April 2019, we all set out, a goal for ourselves that we are going to be in Hong Kong. Okay, and the Volcanoes, the first time that they reached the Hong Kong Sevens was they bowed out in the elimination stage, and last year they took the home crowd, the home team, Hong Kong, to quarterfinals. Unfortunately, again, the Philippine Volcanoes bowed out, but we reached the playoffs.
Right.
And
so yeah,
it doesn't happen every year. That's why it is a really big thing for Philippine rugby. I've been with Philippine rugby for 4 years now, and some of them have been playing rugby for at least a decade. And even if I'm just new with
mm-hmm.
Philippine rugby, it gave me so much pride as a Filipino to be there, to be
Right.
able to take photos of the Volcanoes
Yes.
in their highest achievement in world rugby ever.
All right. So would you say that you are also growing together with, of course, the clients that you serve? Because as they dream, you also dream also like, okay, I want that route as well.
Yes,
Yes,
I do,
of course.
because
Okay, that's beautiful.
with every shoot that I go to, I always try to have a really important takeaway. I always try to at least get one new learning moment, and the whole Hong Kong experience, the whole 2 3 days of taking photos of the Philippine volcanoes there. I found out that this is how international rugby is played. This is
Yeah, you
how
hadn't
international
experienced.
rugby is set up.
Right, right.
So yeah, just 2 to 3
Yeah.
days of learning.
Okay, well, that's great. At least you learning never stops. And that's actually really, really great and important to
Yeah.
any profession. Okay, so going through, as we wrap this up, Raymond, what are the essentials of becoming a sports photographer if they want to get into this niche?
Uh, Based on my experience, I'm gonna have to say you have to be financially smart. I unfortunately was not financially smart at first.
Mm-hmm.
So you really have to plan things out. Always, always have that good network or good clientele before you leave your 9 to 5. Uh, what else? Essentials, patience. Sports is always an ever random kind of event. Rarely, it's a rare instance that you can uh, manufacture or get that non-candid planned moment. You always have to be ready when you're taking photos of any type of sport. Uh, I think my last essential would be,
Love
since
what you
it's
do?
not of course, yeah, you need to
Okay.
love what you do, but yeah, always get working on your, or at least improving on your portfolio,
Mm-hmm.
because like any other, employer, any other uh, job opportunity, management will always ask you what is your experience. It doesn't to them to them it doesn't matter if you're a college graduate, if you're a high school graduate, if you took up vocational. To them, what's important is you can deliver what they need, which is sports photos, marketing photos if they have a number of sponsors. They have
Mm-hmm.
needs, and they and when you set up your portfolio, when you set up your website, you can show them that you can deliver what they need.
Okay. Well, thank you for those. So what is next for you, Mr. Braganza?
What is next? Unfortunately, with this COVID-19 situation, everything is on hold. So I've transitioned to an online career as of now. But once this coronavirus pandemic is over, I go back to Philippine
To the field.
Rugby,
Yeah, of
to the
course.
field.
Yes,
I
of
think
course.
I have gotten lighter skin shade now because I've been less exposed to the sun, I think. But for me, it's uh, getting those new clientele for NPBL. I have one. I have prospects of two more once the season resumes, or once everything is back to normal.
Okay.
It's back to the grind for me.
Of course, of course. All right, so thank you so much for that, Raymond. You guys, I hope you were able to pick up a lot of valuable insights on this
I
webinar
hope
and on
so.
this podcast. And it's such a rare opportunity for us to have him here, and of course, me asking him all these questions. But this is great. Thank you for sharing also your journey with us, and also for the
Yes.
Ambitious Tribe, for the After Six Club as well. So you guys, if you would want to be mentored and jump on sports photography, go ahead and message Raymond. You can
Yes.
visit his Instagram. That's RVE Braganza. Did I spell it right?
It's at
RV
RV Braganza
Braganza.
for
RV
Instagram.
Braganza.
And I will
Yeah,
be publishing my website
again.
April.
Yes, yes. Okay, and his website is raymondbraganza.com. And you guys,
Yep.
will send you an invitation of his upcoming trainings and mentorship program. He's been doing his one-on-one, his sports photography and photography one-on-one, and soon, because it's an online business now with all the things that's happening, we'll be sending you an invite. So yeah, basically that's it. I will be again dropping the sign up sheet. Just go ahead and sign up there. It's going to be available
Yep.
for us, for Raymond as well, for 2020 and onwards. So just sign up there. We'll be able to see it. Okay, so remember, guys, to hit like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to get yourself
Yep.
even more informed about our succeeding episodes. Again, this is Cassie, and I wish you all, you guys, a wonderful health, stay healthy, and of course, drive ambition. We'll see you again soon. Bye.